Ah, the telltale rattle that there's peas in there.
Yay!
In all seriousness, I am just checking over the peas just to make sure that they are okay. That the pigeons aren't actually getting on here at the moment and doing any more damage. Certainly this cover that Mrs. W's put over the arch has helped. And as you can see, there are many, many peas.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Did the arch work? Of course it did. Look at them all. They haven't got much longer to go now before they'll actually meet in the middle. And then we'll take the tops out and let them do what they want to do. However, in today's video, we're going to be looking at a completely different legume. It's time to harvest the broad beans. And once that job is done, the next successional planting will go in their place. Hello and welcome back to our garden here in sunny Norfolk in the UK. It was sunny a little while ago, but we do keep getting these thunderstorms that move through, and every now and again it decides to put some rain down on things, but we don't mind that at all. We don't mind that at all. We've gone from a quite warm and muggy 25 degrees and it goes crashing down to a lovely cool 20 degrees. It makes working in the garden so much better. Now you catch me just harvesting the broad beans. And what I do like to do is to just cut the plants down at the base, and I leave those in the ground. Not going to take those up because there will be some brassicas going in here next, and the one thing that all legumes do is they fix nitrogen. So from their roots they are able to give the plant the nitrogen which enables the peas to develop, and the beans in this case, their nodules actually fix the nitrogen. And there is a belief that there will still be some left in those nodules of the roots once you harvest the plant. Now, I am no scientist. I can't tell you if that's true. What I can tell you though is that it won't do your follow-on plants any harm. Wherever possible within our crop rotation, we try to ensure that we follow any legume with a brassica. And it's not failed us yet. One of the great things about growing your own broad beans is that you can harvest them whenever you want to the size that you would like to harvest them. And you know, when I was a little boy, my father used to grow these and I was never keen on them. Didn't like them at all. But he was one of these people that would grow them to their maximum size. They wouldn't be this lovely green colour that you see now. They would be a very brown colour and very leathery.
With black, those black ends on,
Yeah.
which is a sign.
Instead of green.
Yeah.
And I've spent a long time at the kitchen table with those beans rattling around my mouth. But I don't anymore. Since we've been able to grow our own, we always harvest them the way that we like to enjoy them. And regardless whether it's broad beans or potatoes, whatever, you can, when you grow your own, you can always harvest them at the moment that you like them. Not when Mr. Tesco or Mr. Sainsbury or Mr. Asda, not when they decide they're ready for you to eat, when you think they are the right time for you to be able to eat.
Not even when your dad thinks it's the right time, Barry.
It's very true. Not even when my poor old dad thinks it's time. God bless him. So yeah, even if I wasn't growing brassicas in here, I would still always leave these roots in the ground. And actually you can see that the black fly has arrived on these plants. The last time we looked at these, we didn't have any black fly. And I was giving you the advice to take the tops out so that they don't have a landing space. However, for us, by the time the black fly actually did come, the plants had already borne their beans. And I came out one morning and I said to Mrs. W, do you know what? There are so many ladybirds on these plants having their breakfast. And I shall think of them. I thought, why should I spoil their breakfast? Because now that I'm harvesting these, I should be enjoying those beans to eat. So why spoil the ladybirds' fun? Of course, if they had have come 4 weeks ago and made a real mess of the plant, then we would have taken the tops out and done something about it. Now, you saw in the last video that we were talking about compost. And with these will go onto the compost. All I do is just cut them up into manageable sizes for the beast. Because he does burp rather a lot if you're giving them too big a whole plant.
Oh dear.
And the great thing about this is that all of a sudden on this plant we have a mixture of greens and browns. The stalks will be almost classic brown. But the leaves, they will be classed as a green. So you don't really need to mix anything else together. You can hear as I'm snipping how, that's turned to a brown, not a green anymore. Whereas 3 months ago, that would have been classed as a green.
They do become a little bit woody as they get a bit older.
Exactly, they do come a bit more
Definitely
woody.
the bottom of the stems, yeah.
And the last time we looked at these beans, we also said about the chocolate spot. And you can see this hasn't affected the harvest whatsoever. We still have many beans. So long as your plants are not absolutely covered in these brown spots, you'll be fine. And I've yet to have a year when every leaf, every plant is covered in this chocolate spot.
But we always get a little bit, don't we? Well,
We always get a little
of
bit. We
chocolate
do always
spot,
get a little bit, especially when it's on this side of the garden. And I do think it's because it's much damper on this side of the garden. It's much wetter than the other side. And I don't think that helps. But as I say, you can see there's many beans to harvest. So, less of the talking, Mrs. W. We need to get harvesting these beans.
Okay, on my way.
So as I said in the composting video, anything green that comes out of this garden, all brown, will end up in here. This is now down to just half full. So So it's only actually taken a few days to compost everything down that we put in there last weekend. And we have lots because these beans are tall beans, so there's plenty of green there. And we'll just go on making compost for us. And then by the weekend, of course, our lawns will be ready to be mowed again. And then that can be the next top up into the beast. Although we're only halfway through the Broads. And there was our harvest of broad beans. And all of this lovely food came from just 24 plants that don't really take up a huge amount of space. They overwinter, or can do if you want them to. And then you have this available to you now. And they're such a versatile vegetable. You can freeze them if you have too many to eat all at once. And they do freeze really well. They're lovely to eat in salads, to have as a fresh vegetable. And later on in the year, the ones that we freeze, we'll often add them into our stews and casseroles and, you know, puts a vegetable into that for you. So here's to the broad bean. So it's the following evening now. We just managed to get a dressing of compost onto plot 3. And the reason why that needed to be done was because everything that's been planted in this plot, whether it be the broad beans, the cauliflowers that were there, and the garlic and the shallots, there was no compost put on these beds over last autumn. Everything just grew on. I didn't quite have enough compost to do it, but this still had a nice compost layer on it. So I need to make sure I got some compost on this now, so that these plants can then enjoy the goodness that this is going to give them. So now we're going to move on to the succession planting for bed 3 in plot 3. And what's going in here are some brassicas, but namely sprouts and kale. Now, if you look at these sprout plants, for us, they're really quite on the large side. We needed to pot these on in order to keep them going, because I don't know how you guys have found it, but for us, the broad beans have harvested much later this year than they would normally. Normally by mid-June, daggone, from an autumn planting. And we can then get sprouts in that would normally follow them, and the kales that we're going to be planting. But that didn't happen this year, and we had to wait all the way up to almost the end of June to get the harvest from our broad beans. So we needed to just pop these on, and there's something that you can do. So don't worry, you know, you're better off to have plants that are ready to go than to have harvested all your broad beans and go, just going in here. Because you do have the option of potting these on to keep them going along nicely until you're ready for them. So we'll start with the sprouts, and these are a variety called Brody. And it's always important to remember with brassicas, whichever brassica you're growing, they need to be in firm ground. One thing that No Dig does offer you is firm ground, because it's never disturbed by being turned over with a spade or a fork. Now I do know that some people who are not no dig, they will tread the ground. And it's not a bad thing to do if you're not no dig like us, to tread your grounds just so that it's nice and firm. If the ground is not firm, what will happen is that the buttons on the sprouts will tend to blow. Cabbage hearts will be loose. Cauliflowers can be on the small side and can blow considerably. So, yeah, basically think of how tight you want that cabbage head, and that's how you want your ground to be. The ground needs to match the conditions that you want your brassicas to be. Hello, Poppy. Hello. So the idea in this bed is that we will go sprout, kale, sprout, kale, sprout. So ultimately we end up with 6 sprout plants and 2 each of the kales we're going to grow. So in here we are going to be putting in our dwarf green curled kale, curly kale. But in this row we're going to be putting some Cavolo Nero in. I haven't taken that one out, Mrs. W, so there we go. We've got rid of that. There were 2 that germinated there.
Yeah.
So we're now thin to the strongest, and in that can go. Now, when I'm growing sprouts and kale, the spacing that I like to use is a good 2 foot. You can probably get away with 18 inches, but 2 feet in each direction is really, really good. And especially with sprouts. Now, one of the reasons I like to particularly grow this variety of sprout Brody is that it doesn't get too tall. Because some sprouts can get really, really tall. So then you don't have to have so much netting. And you don't have to have the hoops so high where the wind can catch them. And with this variety of Brody on the sprouts, it produces, oh, lots of sprouts, doesn't it?
Nice.
Oh, yes.
Amount, yeah.
So, just because it doesn't get so tall, doesn't mean to say you're not going to get lots of lovely sprouts. We'll give those a really good watering in so that they settle down nicely into their new homes. Now, another job that I do need to do in plot 3, so you can see the parsnips have come along really, really nicely, but we now need to look now, and in some cases we've got more than one plant growing. So what we want to do is to thin to the strongest plant now, and the easiest way to do that is to cut the plant out that you don't want, and then it won't grow anymore. And the reason why we do this is so that we ensure that something germinates. So you can see here there are actually 3 plants, because what we did was plant 3 seeds at that station. So that one looks really lovely, so we're going to keep that one. And we're going to stop these 2. Now those brassicas have had a good watering in, and we've put the hoops on and got the covers over. Now this time of the year it's not so much the pigeons, although I'm pretty sure they'd go after them if they weren't covered, but it's not so much that. We'll be expecting the white butterfly here very, very soon. We've seen the odd one fluttering about over the last couple of weeks, It's not going to be long before they'll be here like a squadron, trying to find all of the brassicas that are in the country. We have lots of broad beans that will keep us busy this evening while we pod them, get those beans into the freezer. Now, I do hope that your broad bean harvest has been good. Do let us know down in the comments exactly how your harvest was. We thought it was going to be a disappointing harvest, but actually they did manage to catch up in the end, and we did actually get a very, very good harvest from our broad beans. If you like what we do, then please subscribe to our channel. We would love you to. And follow us on our journey through our year of gardening. The next time that we return to plot 3, it'll be time for the garlic and the shallot harvest, and then the succession planting that will follow those. We shall see you next time.